Watching TV has changed over time. Streaming has become the new norm. That's why Golden State Media Concepts television podcast dives headfirst to the world of cord cutting. Want to be on the loop of what's hot in Netflix? Or if it's not a preference, what about original shows in Hulu? We've got you covered. Join us as we fill in the blank and talk about movies to stream and what show you should be binging. This is the Golden State Media Concepts television podcast.
Greetings, good people of the planet Earth and the known universe. You're listening to Golden State Media Concepts television podcast. It's your Captain Keith. And today, good people, we're going over the best of television in 2018. So this is part one, because I know there'll be a second part. So I wanted to share with you just the great television that I got a chance to watch last year and bring to you out there in the universe. So to kick things off, we're going to start off with one of my favorite shows. I can't wait for season 2 to come. Killing Eve, starring Sandra Oh, formerly of Grey's Anatomy and Sideways fame. So just to give you a quick synopsis again, or not quick, but we'll talk about what the show is and then my take on it. So Eve's life as a spy is not adding up to what she had hoped. Eve is Sandra Oh's character. It's not adding up to what she had hoped it would be when she started. She is bored, very smart. She's an MI5 security officer who is very desk-bound. Villanelle is a very talented killer, mercurial in mood, who clings to the luxuries of her job. Eve and Villanelle go head-to-head in a fierce game of cat and mouse, each woman equally obsessed with the other, as Eve is tasked with hunting down the psychopathic assassin. Sarah Barnett, BBC president, says, Killing Eve stands out in the sea of scripted stories as professionally entertaining and great fun. That is true. That is very true. Killing Eve was one of those rare shows that when it debuted, the ratings were at a certain level, and each week the show, as each episode happened, the ratings, they grew rapidly, they rose. So it's one of those rare gems where people start catching on and more people start watching as the weeks went by. So, and it's a great show. I like it a lot. It's dark. It's fierce. Some of it's very comedic. Villanelle, the beautiful psychopathic assassin, is very interesting. She likes her job. She likes killing people. It's creepy. It's her thing, and she winds up obsessing over Eve, Sandra Oh's character. Eve's character loves her husband, but she is bored with her life. So it's just, you just get the impression when you watch the show that she is, someone who wants more. And you don't know if she was always that way before she got married or if she just got that way after her life just became humdrum. And this is based off of novels called the Villanelle novels by Luke Jennings. So they adapted it for television, which is, I'm glad they did. I'm going to have to read those books because the show is amazing. Eve pays attention to detail. And the office she works for, they're just not really equipped to handle what's going to happen with Villanelle. And by the time Villanelle has this handler who's like, you need to behave yourself. You only kill when we tell you to. You can't go off script. And Villanelle is just like, yeah, okay. But, of course, she doesn't listen. She doesn't listen. And because she doesn't listen, Eve winds up getting on her trail. And by the time that Villanelle realizes that this woman is getting close to nabbing her. So now, mind you, if you are a professional assassin or killer and you find out that someone's trying to catch you, okay, usually the response would be, okay, well, I'm going to have to like kill this person or subdue this person so they can't catch me. You're probably going to go with the first, you know. No, not Villanelle. Villanelle's so quirky. So quirky. So first of all, so Villanelle, when she realizes who Eve is and that Eve's trying to get her, she starts obsessing over Eve. Sexually. She she wants this woman. It's just, I've never seen a show like this in my life. It's just very, I got to tell you, the BBC is doing their thing. I have to give the producers and creators of Luther, props and respect, because I feel like this goes back to Idris Elba playing John Luther, a good detective who's just dark and quirky, and his chemistry with Alice. I feel like BBC figured out that that's an area, a theme that they should explore, and you're getting that, like a female equivalent of that with Killing Eve. So Eve is being, lusted upon by Villanelle. She doesn't even know it. So she goes on this trip so they can try to, conduct this investigation and catch her. And when Eve sees her, when Villanelle sees Eve and her luggage, she steals her luggage because she's so obsessed and just goes through it. Then there's a scene where she hires this woman to sleep with, and she's like, your name is Eve for now. It's just really dark and twisted. And then, like I said, Villanelle has this handler. He's an older guy. He's charismatic and funny. And whenever Villanelle sees this guy who's her handler, who gives her assignments, she's always like, how come you never sleep with me or never try to sleep with me? So she's excited and aroused by this guy because he hasn't come on to her. She's a hot mess. But when you watch the show, it's just so intriguing. You just get stuck. You want more and more because you don't know what's going to happen next. And eventually Eve figures out what's going on with Villanelle because she's like, where's my luggage? I don't have my luggage. She thinks it's lost, but no. Oh, no. Eve, Villanelle had it, and she was going through it, sniffing it, smelling it, rubbing her body with it. It was crazy. And just, she's just excited. So what you realize going into the show or watching it is that Villanelle has been bored too. She loves her job, but she needs some excitement. And having a woman who's like basically her equal pursue her when she's been so careful for so many years, killing people and getting away with it, it's a turn on. She feels alive again. So, so they have this cat and mouse thing going, and there's this, there's this sexual tension between the two of them, and it shows. And then there are other supporting cast characters that have interesting backgrounds that are great as well in the show. She has a friend. I want to make sure I say his name right. I think it's Frank. Let's see. Give me 1 second here. One of her colleagues, who's pretty cool. One of Eve's colleagues. Let's see. Yeah, Frank. Yeah, he's a character as well to watch out for when you watch the show. But the show is great between watching, and then you see like Eve is. There's a fine line that really separates her and Villanelle. And it's cool to see a TV show where the so-called good guy or good girl and the bad girl, there's not too much that separates them. Two different sides to the same coin, and you see that in the show. and you never know, and you just don't know what's going to happen next. And like I said, there's dark humor in it too, that you'll enjoy. Villanelle is very funny. She's very interesting, very much so. Free-spirited, free with her sexuality. She's just free in general. She basically lives by her own rules, even though she has a handler, and that, can be considered problematic. And Eve is she's alive again because, she's been tracing these different murders, and she finally figures out they're connected to Villanelle, but she doesn't know her name yet. And it just goes from there. And like I said, I can't wait for season 2 because season 1 was great, especially the way it ended. I'm not going to even tell you, but a nice little twist in season 1. So I like the show. I like the chemistry. I like how it's written. BBC is doing their thing. They're redefining what it is to have a cop show. Yeah. I can honestly say that the British, in my opinion, the British are doing that better than in America right now. Their cop dramas are a lot more interesting, a lot more intriguing, darker, just more layers to dive into. Between the hero and the villain, the chemistry in their shows is just a lot more fun to watch. So, by the way, Villanelle is played by Jodie Comer. She's amazing. She should get an Emmy. And Sandra Oh plays Eve Pilastri. So Eve gets a promotion to this new, to working for a secret part for MI5 because this woman comes in who winds up being one of the head honchos, and Eve just starts talking about, the murder scenes and how they're all kind of connected. And she has lots of detail. So when this lady hears that, she recruits Eve to leave the government job she has to come work for her in secret. And then you find out throughout the series that this woman that Eve is working for, she's got secrets. She's got connections. It gets layered and very layered. And it's hard to know who you can trust from who you can't trust. So, and that just makes the show even more intriguing when you watch it. It's a great show. And apparently, season 2 has been approved. We're going to get it sometime in 2019, but there is no specific date for it yet. But I definitely want to encourage you guys, if you haven't seen it, watch the first season of Killing Eve. You won't be disappointed. And like the cover for the TV show is a picture of Eve and Villanelle in the front, and Villanelle has Eve in a headlock with her left arm underneath Eve's face, or her chin, and Eve's looking over her. Very intriguing. But yeah, excellent show. One of the best of 2018 to watch. So BBC has done it again. Good old British Broadcasting Company. BBC America, I believe, actually. So I want to give you guys the scoop on that. That's a good show to watch. Also, I want to talk about The Last OG. Now, I don't know if they're going to renew it for season 2 or not. This stars Tracy Morgan and Tiffany Haddish. And let me give you the synopsis again. Spending 15 years in prison didn't transform Trey, but everything else sure seemed to change. After he is released on good behavior, he returns to his newly affluent Brooklyn neighborhood and is shocked to find out how much different the world is. For starters, he's the father to 2 twins, sons. They're not 2 twin sons. He's got a twin son and daughter, fraternal twins, born to his former girlfriend, Shay, played by Tiffany Haddish. She is now married to a successful white man who is helping raise the teenagers who grew up in private schools and can't relate to their dad's hard-scrabble upbringing. Wishing he could connect with his kids, but having neither the money to support them nor himself, Trey relies on some well-worn skills to make ends meet while treading in unfamiliar territory. So Oscar winner Jordan Peele is actually the co-creator and co-executive producer for this series. So now what they don't tell you is that while Trey was in prison, he learned how to cook. So he wants to be a chef now that he's out of prison. So he wants to make that dream come true. And he's still in love with Shay. There's even a flashback scene. Basically, Trey used to sell cocaine in the 90s. And in the flashback, Shay's telling him, don't go out in the street because they're hanging out in the apartment having a good time. And he goes out and he gets caught up. He gets set up. And he gets, he goes to jail. And his life changes forever after that. We'll talk some more about that after this break.
Want to know the latest and hottest music hitting the airwaves? Don't be left out. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Music Podcast. Keith keeps you on the loop with everything you need to know from pop, rock, hip-hop, and the top 40. And we'll throw in news of your favorite artists, concert and tour dates, and so much more. Listen no further, because this is the gold standard in music podcast.
And you're listening to Golden State Media Concepts Television Podcast. Your Captain Keith, talking about The Last OG, one of the best TV shows of last year, 2018, starring Tracy Morgan and Tiffany Haddish. So Trey, who's Tracy Morgan's character, when he gets out of jail, he's just a man out of time. He's just out of sorts because he has to readjust. I mean, nothing is what he thought it would be. He stayed the same with the exception of learning how to cook while in prison. And be very creative with the things that he's cooking. Brooklyn's been gentrified. He had no idea that he was a father. So now he's got to, spend time with his children, make himself feel relevant to them and be relevant for them. And Shay has changed. Well, she's changed and she hasn't. She's a successful businesswoman. She's married, and she married a white guy who's been raising her kids with her, who they call dad. So it's this is all strange for Trey's character. So, and then Trey's best friend, he died, but his little brother is still alive, and he's played by the same actor actually, which is kind of clever, Alan Maldonado playing Bobby. So Bobby comes out, he greets Trey. That's his only friend he really has. Trey's forced to live in a halfway house ran by Cedric the Entertainer's character named Mullins, who wants to be a comic who's just bad with his jokes. I mean, he's telling like really bad jokes that no one likes or gets. And Trey's the only one just like, nah, man, it's not funny. But it's cool to see Cedric the Entertainer in the show with Tracy Morgan and Tiffany Haddish. The chemistry's great. But yeah, it's a funny show. It's a good show. It's interesting. It's the whole perspective is unique and fascinating. There's never really been a TV show about an ex-con who gets out of jail and finds out that he's a father and finds out that the world around him has changed, and he's just trying to find his place. He's just trying to find his place. And he looks at his ex-fiance, and, she's still the same beautiful woman that he loved, but she's moved on. She didn't tell him about the kids because she felt like he made the wrong choice when he left the apartment and got arrested and forced her to do it on her own. So it's just, I enjoy the show. I enjoy watching the interaction between Trey and the stepfather, who is played by Josh. Josh is the stepfather. He's played by Ryan Gall. He's very funny. And it's spelled Gaul. So I pray that I'm saying his name right. Their interaction is very funny. It's very priceless. You find out Trey thinks, Ryan, he thinks that Josh is just a squeaky clean guy who's now the dad to my kids, and how can I compete with this white dude who's married to, my woman? She's not your woman anymore. And, he doesn't know what to do and how to go about things. And then he thinks that when he gets out of jail that he's going to just get an easy job as a cook somewhere, and without realizing that he has to go to like culinary art school or maybe start as a short order cook at some restaurant somewhere first. So because he can't be the chef that he thinks he already is, and by the way, when you watch him and you watch what he makes, he is pretty good. He's very creative. He winds up getting a job with his old friend, working as a barista in his coffee spot, and that old friend is Malik Yoba. That's his name in real life. I'm just trying to figure out. Is it Chauncey? Hold on, let me. What his name is on the show? Give me 1 second. Wavy. I mean, yeah, the guy calls himself Wavy. You gotta love it, and his character's pretty cool too because he's just Mr. Cool Guy, walks around with his wavy gold chain charm around his neck. So he's got his suit and tie on, but he's got the wavy gold chain that hangs right over the tie. Yeah, so he gives Trey a job as a barista at his coffee shop because, you know, basically when Trey was selling drugs, he was doing it for Wavy, and he didn't snitch. So Wavy's like, okay, well, you know, I got you. And it goes from there. But it's an intriguing show. I like it. It's very funny. And like I said, some of it gets kind of dark, and I'm not going to tell you about that part. You just have to see it for yourself. So just when you think it's just really silly and funny, some of it gets very serious. And I'm curious to see where it's going to go. I really am. But I like it. The Last OG. Last Original Gangster. So very cool show. So check it out. You won't be disappointed. And Tiffany Haddish is funny as Shay. Sassy, smart, and just real. Her chemistry with Tracy Morgan is a joy to see. So she's been blowing up the spot everywhere she goes these days. So she's putting the work in, and it definitely shows. So that's another great TV show to watch. And so, you know, before this podcast is over, I'm going to talk about Krypton, right? But I don't know if I want to talk about it now or later on. We're going to save that for later on in the podcast. Yeah, so I can sink my teeth into that with you guys. So, Cobra Kai. Where do I start? Found this show on YouTube Premium. And it was this show that got me to subscribe to YouTube Premium. Otherwise, it wasn't going to happen. But I'm glad that it did. I don't regret it at all. YouTube Premium has been a great streaming platform for original programming. So I'm happy about that. So Cobra Kai. You're like, well, Captain Keith, didn't you talk about that before? Yes. And we're going to talk about it again. One of the best shows of 2018. 34 years after events of the 1984 All-Valley Karate Tournament, a down-and-out Johnny Lawrence seeks redemption by reopening the infamous Cobra Kai dojo, reigniting his rivalry with the now-successful Daniel LaRusso, who sells cars for a living. And he's always using his whole karate tournament thing to help him sell cars, chopping down prices and stuff. So, poor Johnny, he drives by and he sees those billboards and he's just shaking his head. So, where do I start? This show is excellent. My only complaint with this show in the first season is that the episodes were all a half hour long. And maybe they did that because they didn't know if people were going to dig the show or not. I wanted them to be longer. You get some flashback scenes. You see Johnny's childhood and what made him who he is and how he became like the bad guy in the Karate Kid movies. The show is great because you get his perspective. You're like, okay, so what happened to him? And you see it. You know, he's down and out. He's like divorced. He's got a son that he doesn't see. And his life is going nowhere. He's got no discipline, and he just doesn't care. So it seems like Daniel LaRusso has everything, and Johnny Lawrence has nothing. And mind you, if you watch the original Karate Kid movies, you know, Johnny Lawrence's girlfriend was played by Elizabeth Shue's character, and she wound up leaving him to go with Daniel LaRusso. And then in the end, you know, her and Danny broke up too, so neither one of them ended with the girl. So basically, what happens in this new series reboot, you see Johnny start to build himself back up. He does open up the dojo, and he finally learns how to talk to other people because he's not people oriented at first. In his apartment complex, this kid moves in, and he winds up befriending Johnny. And Johnny sees that the kid's being picked on, and Johnny helps the kid out, and the kid convinces Johnny to teach him, karate. And eventually Johnny's like, okay. And then the kid winds up getting other people who are kind of like picked on in school and outcast, and they join the dojo. And Johnny goes back to what he knew because his Cobra Kai mentor sensei was like more of a father figure than his own dad. So, when Johnny's like, show no mercy, there it is. And what's cool about the Karate Kid movie franchise, especially the first one, if you're lucky and fortunate, you'll see there's this T-shirt that goes around, and it has his sensei on the front, and it's so sweet, it's so sinister, and he's folding his shoulders, and it says "sweep the leg." Yeah, that's from the first movie when it came down to Danny and Johnny for the final round, and Johnny Sensei's like, "You win at all costs. Sweep the leg, kick him in the, take the cheap shot." So when I see that T-shirt, I just smile and shake my head like, "Oh, that's just so wrong," but it's so fitting from the movie. So yeah, in this TV series, you see a softer side to Johnny. Johnny is, he's at first he's just kind of rude to these kids, and what happens is that, his neighbor who he winds up taking under his wing. Let me give you his name in 1 second. Miguel, played by Zolo Mariduena. Miguel Diaz. Miguel's like, look, Sensei, you can't talk to them like that. They're getting out of school. They're here so they can be better. And, how would you feel if someone talked to you that way? So eventually John's like, okay, I get it. Because, a girl pops up and it's like, I'm not going to teach any girls. So Johnny's like a throwback from the 80s. He's stuck in the past. And his young neighbor Miguel winds up pulling him out of the past and bringing him into the present and in the future. And it's cool to see it. And they form like this father-son type of bond. First, the mother is very overprotective. She doesn't want Miguel learning karate. But then she sees that he's bonding with Johnny, and Johnny starts to be friendly to Miguel's mom, and he winds up eating dinner with them and stuff. So, things are going along smoothly. His dojo starts to build up. And there's a scene where Miguel winds up getting more confidence because his bully's trying to pick on him. And Miguel uses the karate that Johnny's taught him, and it works. And then one of his classmates is like, "No mercy." She says, "No mercy." As Miguel winds up kicking this guy's butt in the lunchroom in front of everybody. So, and then you see that, Johnny's son is kind of wayward, and Johnny's, the mother of his child, she's just not a real positive person. And, because Johnny gets a phone call about his son getting into trouble. And when he sees his son, they talk at each other and it doesn't work. And there's just the whole thing with that. And then you wind up seeing Danny LaRusso. He sees the Cobra Kai dojo open up, and he starts to freak out because he's having flashbacks to his high school karate days. And he's just thinking that Johnny's just this bad guy. And Johnny's driving this really beat up car. And, Johnny's low on money. But like I said, things start to turn around because the school starts to pick up. The teaching starts to catch on. So, of course, because Danny always feels competitive with Johnny, he's like, I got to stop this. What can I do? So he tries to stop them from opening, he tries to stop Johnny from keeping the dojo open, but he fails because Johnny goes and he speaks to the board about what he's trying to do and how he helps the kids, and Danny gets outvoted. So once again, they're on opposite sides. And Danny's got a daughter, and she's the same age as Johnny's son and Miguel. So there's this whole thing about what's going to happen with this whole new generation, how are things going to play out. This TV series is actually produced by Overbook Entertainment, which is Will and Jada Smith's production company. Loved season 1. So much fun, addictive. It totally pulled me into YouTube Premium, YouTube Red. I can't wait for season 2. I can't. I have some mixed feelings about how season 1 ended. So we're going to see how things get played, because who's good and, well, I don't want to give it away, but I'm looking forward to seeing what they do in season 2, especially because of how they left things in season 1. But there are twists and turns in season 1 that you don't see coming that are pretty cool. So once again, that's Cobra Kai, named after, it's named after the type of karate that Johnny did. That was the rival gang, the rival karate group that Ralph Macchio went up against. And it's cool seeing Ralph Macchio and, what's his name in real life? Sorry. I forgot to tell you that, didn't I? William Zabka, who plays Johnny Lawrence. It's cool to see Ralph Macchio and William Zabka, 30 plus years later, doing their thing. As adults, still have a rivalry, and like I said, there's a whole new generation, and what's going to pan out for them, and what's going to happen with the Cobra Kai school. Is it going to stay? Will it be successful? Will they face? And what type of adversity are they going to face? They face adversity in the first season. I'm not going to tell you how, but they do. But check it out. It's a really cool show. So much respect for Will and Jada for producing this series. And their remake of Karate Kid with their son Jaden Smith and Jackie Chan was an amazing movie. So I like that too, and Taraji P. Henson as well. But yeah, YouTube Premium, Cobra Kai Season 1, one of the best in 2018. We'll be back with more Best Of after this break.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
And we're back. Once again, you're listening to GSMC's television podcast on the GSMC Podcast Network. This is your Captain Keith, talking about the best of television in 2018. And we just finished talking about Cobra Kai. Now I want to talk about a Netflix original series called Marcella. And wow. So I don't know if you remember, but last year we talked about, when we were talking about new TV shows that were exciting, I told you there was a new thing that kind of happened to me that never happened to me before. I started watching some TV shows that I really enjoyed, but the main character was somebody that I didn't like. But the writing for the show was so good and riveting that I didn't leave. I had to keep watching. So it was a weird sensation and feeling watching a new TV series and not liking the main character, because 99% of the time you're rooting for the for the good guy or the good girl. You're rooting for them. You're like, you love the main character. You're emotionally invested in the main character. But the way TV's written now, the best shows have an ensemble cast where you get to know all these quirky details about the supporting cast members. And so there's not so much pressure put on the main character, which is good. And you get that in Marcella, but it's just interesting to have a character that's not that likable. And maybe the character is because that character is a hero / anti-hero. That's a whole different fascinating thing too. That whole genre and that whole term, anti-hero. Very, very fascinating. So, but as I was saying, this is a Netflix original series, Marcella, from acclaimed writer Hans Rosenfeld. Continues his first British drama following the international success of the Swedish/Danish series, The Bridge. Anna Friel, or Friel, stars in the lead role of Marcella Backlund, a British police detective working in contemporary London, set in Rosenfeld's unique style of Nordic noir. The body of a missing child is discovered inside a wall, and a task force is assembled to catch the killer. A complex set of characters from all walks of life and interweaving storyline takes viewers on a dark and emotional journey with turns into every corner. And that's true. So Marcella has been retired from the police force for a few years now. She's got 2 kids. She's divorced. And by the way, her name is Marcella Backlund. She's divorced from her ex-husband, Jason Backlund, played by Nicholas Pinnock. And she's still stuck in the past. She still loves her ex-husband. Doesn't really know why they're not together anymore. And he's moved on. Basically, Marcella gets sucked back into working with the police force because someone comes to interview her about an older case that she used to have. And that just brings her back in because she's just at home. She stopped working so she could, be a full-time mom. And it's just interesting to see what happens. She's a good cop, but she can be very abrasive as a cop and just as a person. She loves her kids, but she's not always attentive in the right way with them. And her relationship with her ex is just kind of strained and very interesting. There's a love-hate thing going on with the two of them. So her daughter is Emma Backlund, played by Imogene Ferris, and their son is Edward Backlund, played by Asher Flowers. And she's also winds up working with D.I. Tim Williamson, played by Jamie Bamber, formerly of Battlestar Galactica, who played Apollo. The show it's different. It's just, man. For example, Marcella is investigating, what happened with this murder, and she's having blackouts. And she hasn't told anybody. And during these blackouts, she gets very violent towards other people. And you're like, why is she having these blackouts? And what's up with this cop who's having blackouts? Because, if I'm watching this TV show about this police officer and she's having blackouts, I'm like, what are you guys trying? What are you hiding from me? What's really going on with this character? And that's what makes it intriguing. Her kids, they can feel the tension between her and their father, and they wind up kind of wanting to spend more time with their father than her. Basically, Marcella, she's a good cop. That's all she's got going for herself for the most part. And she just, what I got from watching this show, I felt like she needs a psychiatrist. She needs some therapy, like yesterday. She needs to talk to somebody. She's dealing with something. What's cool about the show is eventually you'll find out why her and her husband split. That's all I'm going to say. And you do find out why she's having these blackouts. And it just adds more and more layers to what's going on. But yeah, she's definitely a problematic person. She doesn't know how to deal with her emotional issues. And then I realized that, like I said, because she's abrasive. She's a good cop, but she's just abrasive. And she just wasn't really likable. And she provoked somebody as a police officer that just made things worse for other people because of what she did. She didn't think it through, that's all I'm going to say. And then I find out, or I realized that I don't really like her ex-husband that much either. But the show is still riveting. So, like I said earlier in the podcast, that last year I discovered these new TV shows that I liked. Most of the time I enjoyed the main character, but there were some times where I didn't care for the main character, but the writing was so good, it didn't matter. I was engaged. And I got to tell you, the way season 1 ended for Marcella, I was like, whoa. My mouth dropped to the floor for multiple reasons, and I don't know what quite to make of it. I mean, I do and I don't. Because once again, I'm just like, what is wrong with you? What is wrong with you? And then when you have to ask yourself too, when you're a police officer, how far do you have to go and how far would you go to solve a crime? How far would you go to get into the mind of a murderer so you can catch him or her? Will you descend into darkness with that person? Will you rise above it? Can you keep your head afloat? Can you keep your sanity while you're trying to catch someone who's insane and dangerous? Marcella basically has lost everything but her job. You know, she's not able to relate to her children right now. She's not on good terms with her ex-husband. And like I said, I wound up not liking him that much either. I didn't like either one of them after a while throughout the season. But once again, I couldn't stop watching. So there's different characters to look out for. And then there were some other things, too, that kind of bothered me a little bit. Like, there were some common sense things that Marcella seemed to kind of be lacking a little bit. Or, how would I say this? I got the impression that she loves her children very much. That comes across intensely, and it's very evident. But she has a problem with her communication skills with everybody, as far as I'm concerned. But Anna Friel did a great job with this role. She was amazing. She really was, because, you know, she definitely got an emotion out of me when I'm watching the show. And like I said, the way season 1 ended, season 2 is going to be even darker and trippier and more intriguing. Because the ending for season 1 I didn't see coming at all. It was really bizarre, fascinating, creepy, intriguing all at the same time. It was all those things. Written very well. Like I said, if you can get me to watch a show where I don't even like the main character, but I'm excited about the show and to see what happens next, you've done your job. And Netflix did their job with Marcella in that regard. So, you know, definitely much love to them and props. So looking forward to a season 2 of Marcella, Netflix original series, starring Anna Friel as Marcella Backlund. So, and Jamie Bamber playing D.I. Tim Williamson. Look out for his character too. He's a mess. Yeah, it was nice seeing him in a different role. Yeah. So between Jamie Bamber as D.I. Tim Williamson and Nicholas Pinnock as Jason Backlund, Marcella's ex-husband, watch and actually, and Marcella's children, Emma and Edward. All of them do a great job on the show. So check it out, definitely. And next I'm going to talk about Krypton. Yeah, I'm going to talk about that. DC, I was very, 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 very impressed with Krypton. I remember watching the trailers for it. It's a sci-fi original series, and it's like It's a prequel to Superman, and it's a sequel to Superman. It's both. It's a pre-sequel. It's very fascinating. We'll get into it. We'll get into that after this break, after this last break. Yeah.
Want to find out what movies to go see? Then check out the GSMC Movie Podcast. It's your ticket to the latest movies, whether it's a new blockbuster event, romantic, comedy, or action flick. This show has got it all covered. They talk some what to go see now, don't bother, what's hot on Netflix, and everything in between. That's gsmcpodcast.com/movie-podcast. When it's all about the movies, it has to be this new show. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit gsmcpodcast.com for more info.
And we're back. Once again, you're listening to GSMC's television podcast off of the GSMC Podcast Network. This is your Captain Keith, and we're talking about the best of television from 2018. And yes, I want to talk about Krypton. Yeah, I do. Original scripted TV series off of the Sci-Fi Network. Let's get into it. Years before the destruction of the legendary Man of Steel's home planet, Krypton, Superman's grandfather, Seg-El, that's S-E-G-E-L, from the House of El, fights to redeem his family's honor after the House of El is ostracized and shamed over Seg's grandfather's false claims of a world killer coming to Krypton. When an attack on the government is attempted, Seg seizes an opportunity to advance himself and his family by allying with those who sentenced his grandfather to execution and destroyed his family's name. But when evidence that his grandfather's claims were true is discovered, Seg must work within the system that discarded the House of El in order to protect their future legacy. Oh, yeah. That's a great description of the show. So, this is, man, where do I start? This show is great. I love it. I'm waiting for season 2. When I first saw the trailers on the Sci-Fi Network, I was like, I don't know, man. You're going to do a prequel on Superman. Yeah, whatever. But there's so many twists and turns to the show that you just don't see coming. And I must confess, so Seg-El is played by Cameron Cuff, does a great job, C-U-F-F-E. Georgina Campbell plays Lyta Zod. Oh, yes, folks, but wait, there's more. So Krypton, the series, goes over the House of Hell. Excuse me, the House of Hell. Sorry about that. House of El, and also covers the House of Zod. So everyone's living in Kandor City, which is like the capital of Krypton. And Lyta, Zod, played by Georgina Campbell, and Seg-El, Cameron Cuff, they are from two opposing houses. Lyta Zod's mother she's like the head of the military in the city of Kandor. Very staunched, very by the book officer. Her name is Jaina Zod. So, and then there's Adam Strange. So Lyta and Seg are in love with each other, but Jaina Zod does not approve of Lyta being with Seg because Seg has no rank anymore. His house was stripped of it. And Seg's parents are, they're scientists. They're a part of the so-called lower working class now. I hate all that. But so there's like this whole Romeo and Juliet kind of thing going on between Seg and Lyta or Lyta Zod. And then Adam Strange shows up, played by Sean Sipos. Adam Strange is the guy from Earth who comes back to the past to meet Seg, and he tells Seg, hey, man, I'm Adam Strange, and I'm here because, your grandson's going to be the greatest superhero the world's ever known. We call him Superman, also known as Kal-El, and I need your help, and we need to make sure that, you don't get killed, because if they kill you, he'll never be born. So now think about this. You're a young guy in your 20s. You have something to prove because your family's been stripped of their name when they shouldn't have been. And you're in love with a woman who you're not supposed to be in love with. And on Krypton, arranged marriages happen all the time. At least in this storyline, they do. So some guy claiming to be from a planet called Earth that you never heard of comes and tells you that your grandson is going to be the greatest superhero the world's ever seen. And he shows you like a red cape. You're like, yeah, really? I mean, what would you do? How would you feel? I would be like, this guy's crazy. But eventually, Seg listens to Adam, but he finds out that, Adam's not telling him everything. And actually, there's a guy named Dev M, played by Aaron Pierre. He's tied or linked. He's supposed to marry Alita Zod. Jaina Zod approves of their union. So she's supposed to be engaged to him, and she's not supposed to be messing with Seg. And then Seg winds up being engaged to Nyssa Vex from the House of Vex, played by Wallace Day. So, this is great. I mean, it just gets deeper and deeper. And then Val-El is Seg's grandfather, which is Superman's great-grandfather. Right? Or great-great-grandfather. Yeah. Val-El, played by Ian McKinney. He's the guy who's like, hey, there's a world killer out here. You need to be warned. It's going to mess up Krypton. And they're all like, that's heresy, dude. We're stripping you of your rank and we're putting you in the Phantom Zone. Bam. So all that's going on. So like I said, this is a prequel, but it's not a prequel. It's also like a sequel because there's acknowledgement that Superman does exist. But Seg has never seen his grandson. How is he supposed to know all this? So, Seg's just trying to get through life. He's trying to reclaim his house back. There's a situation where he winds up looking in a favorable way. That's why he gets linked to Nyssa Vex from the House of Vex. Now, the House of Vex is also the people that stripped him of his house. So there's irony in that. And Darren Vex, Nyssa's father's like, you'll marry my daughter and you'll take on our name, Vex. But eventually Seg is like, nah, I'll marry your daughter, but I'm not going to take on that name. Does he say that? Maybe he doesn't say that, but he decides that he's... Okay, he may not say that, but he does declare a form of independence, even though he's agreed to marry Nyssa. And Nyssa is a beautiful, intriguing, mysterious woman. Alita is a beautiful, strong woman trying to prove herself to her mom, feeling like no matter what she does, she doesn't have her mom's approval. She feels like her mom may not really love her because her mom is just very strong and kind of hard. So, I mean, seeing these characters is just very fascinating. And then, now mind you, all this is going on. Seg is maneuvering his way through Kandor City, trying to reclaim his house, trying to balance the fact that he's in love with Lyta, but he's engaged to Nyssa, and Lyta's in love with Seg, but she's engaged to Dev, and Dev works in the military along Lyta. And then Adam Strange, you got Adam Strange. The guy's name is Adam Strange, and he's like, hey, man, your grandson's Superman, and we need to make sure that we save you so, that no one kills you so he can be born. And you see this red cape, and you see he shows Seg the cape. That's how Seg knows that the guy is real, because it has the S, which is the House of L's symbol for hope and faith. So I love how eventually they took the S and made it Superman's crest for the House of L. I love that. And then when you're looking at Kandor and you're looking at Krypton, everybody has their own crest for their house. So you see the House of Zod's crest too. So what's interesting is that all this is going on, and there's this religious figure from the House of Rao, who's basically running Kandor. And he's just like a control freak. He also helped in stripping the House of El of their rank. So what people don't realize, but maybe Seg is starting to see it, is that the religious leader, the guy who's the head of the House of Ra, the guy who's the head of the Order of Ra, of that religion, like this cult leader basically running Kandor. He walks around with this gold like mask, and it's got like 3 or 4 different faces on it. It's really creepy, man. I mean, if you were to see this guy, you're like, nah, I'm not going to your church, dude. Nah, I'm good. All that's going on. So they're like, and there's an attempt to try to, assassinate the leader of Rao. And Seg has no love for him. So that's happening. Now, mind you, that's going on. But also, Adam Strange tells Seg, I'm here because Brainiac wants to destroy this world and destroy you so Superman will never be born. So there's the threat of Brainiac. So there's the threat of Brainiac, and there's other threats that pop up on Krypton. And you're just like, wow, where does it end? And then now you get a glimpse into the House of Zod. So now, of course, you understand that Lita and Jaina are the ancestors to General Zod, the infamous, famous General Zod. Now, what people don't realize, though, is that, of course, like in Superman 2 back in the day with Christopher Reeve, Terrence Stamp played General Zod. He did a great job. General Zod's the bad guy. So, yeah, General Zod is a bad guy to Superman, but on Kandor and on Krypton, he wasn't always the bad guy. So it's intriguing to see Lita and Jaina, his ancestors, and then eventually, do I want to even say this? Because when I start doing this television podcast, I will get really excited about these shows. And I found out that I might have been saying a little too much about what was going on, so I don't want to give any spoilers. But I will say that this show gets more and more intriguing. You do see the Fortress of Solitude in its early stages. Basically, Val-El, Seg's grandfather, was this brilliant scientist. Seg gets to see the fortress, and he gets to see a computerized image. Val-El's essence is preserved and contained and shown in the fortress. So Seg gets to talk to this guy, who basically has his grandfather's memories in essence. So I always liked that about Krypton, how they could do that with their loved ones, take their essence and their soul and preserve it so you could talk to them and interact with them later like they never left. I thought that was very cool science fiction. Because so much science fiction today is all about this dystopian life, how everything's bad and the messianic figure's going to come and save the day and free the people. That just gets kind of played, man. It's just so cliche-ic and just, so little tidbits like that I think are cool. I mean, what if you could save a loved one's essence and put it in this like computer or this artificial intelligence that has the essence of your mother or your father, and you're talking to it and they have those memories. It's like they didn't leave. Yeah, they're gone, but they're not. And you can always call upon them for advice. It's just really interesting and fascinating. And it gives you questions about the soul. So one of the most powerful scenes when they're doing the trailers for this show is watching Seg-El hold that red cape in his hand. Adam Strange told him that when that red cape is starting to disintegrate at the bottom, starting to eat itself. He says if this cape eats itself all the way, that means your grandson will never be born. So it's a very powerful moment and scene when you see Seg-El holding that red cape in his hand, knowing that it's his grandson's cape, and he's standing like right above the S on the floor. very, very, just a pivotal moment. And Seg El is a very likable character. I like him a lot. He's all about doing the right thing. He's all about the people and making sure the people are taken care of. In some ways, the House of El getting stripped of their rank was probably the best thing to happen to them, because if they weren't humble before, it taught Seg what it means to be humble and what people go through in everyday life, because he was from an affluent house. So, and then that kind of rubs off on Nissa a little bit too. So he winds up having chemistry with Nissa, even though Nissa knows that he's in love with Lida Zod, or Lida Zod. And Dev M knows that there's a connection between Lida and Seg. And of course, Jaina doesn't approve, played by Anne Ogbomo. She's great. Characters to watch out for on this show: Cameron Cuff as Seg El, Georgina Campbell as Lida Zod, Sean Sipos as Adam Strange, Anna Ogbomo as Jaina Zod, the matriarch of the Zod house. Dev M as Aaron Pierre, Lida's intended. He's very stoic and calm. And Nissa Vex, played by Wallace Day, Seg's intended. And Darren Vex, the head of the House of Vex, by Elliot Cohen. He's a trip too. And there's some surprise people who pop up in the show, and you'll just be hooked. This is probably the best show DC has. I enjoy all of DC superhero shows but one, and I won't even mention that one. So, but you could probably figure out which one I'm talking about. It's the weakest link, and it's been on for a few years. But Krypton is amazing. Can't wait for season 2. Check it out. It's on the Sci-Fi Network. It's an excellent show. Looking forward to seeing what they do. Looking forward to seeing what will happen in the House of Zod. How will the House of El get restored? Will it get restored? Because at this point, Superman may cease to exist if that cape keeps burning up. So, can Krypton be saved? Can Kandor be saved? Can they stop Brainiac? Will the House of Ra, will the religion of Ra spread its propaganda to everywhere? What's going to happen? This show is also great because it gives you the very complicated history between the House of El and the House of Zod. It's very tangled. It's a very tangled web that's been woven. Very fascinating. So I like that the show, it's about the House of El, it's about Superman and his family, but it's also about the Zod family too. So, and the Vex family, there's different players. It's really cool. Very creative show. Definitely the best show DC has. And it's the newest show, but all the DC shows are good except for the one I don't like that won't be mentioned. But yeah, Krypton, Sci-Fi Network, check it out. Good people of planet Earth and the known universe, thank you for listening to Golden State Media Concepts Television Podcast, Best of 2018, Part 1. Hope you had a good time. I know I did. I appreciate you all. Thanks again for listening, and until next time, see you somewhere out in space.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Television Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.